My name is Simone Elise Carter Washington. I'm 38 years old, and I walked into my own dining room on a Tuesday evening in March and found my husband sitting at our mahogany table with another woman. Not just any woman, his mistress. In my house, at my table, drinking from the wine glasses I'd picked out for our 5th anniversary. The ones with the delicate gold rim that caught the light just right. I stood there in the doorway, my keys still in my hand, my work bag sliding off my shoulder, and I heard him laugh. That deep, rich laugh that I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago, when we were both just kids at Howard University with big dreams and empty pockets. That same laugh, now directed at something she said, something amusing enough that he threw his head back, showing all his teeth, completely comfortable, completely at ease, in our home, with her. He didn't even startle when he saw me. That's what hurt the most, I think. There was no guilt in his eyes, no panic, no shame, just mild annoyance, like I was the pizza delivery guy interrupting an important business meeting. "Oh, you're home early," he said, checking his watch like I was the one out of place. "This is Vanessa Morrison. She's my new executive assistant at the firm. Vanessa, this is Simone, my wife." My wife. Said it like it was a job title, a position I held, not a partnership, not a love story, just a role I played in his life. Vanessa stood up, extending her hand with this smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Late 20s, maybe 30. Honey-colored skin, long weave that probably cost more than our monthly grocery bill, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that hugged every curve. The kind of woman who knew exactly what she looked like, and exactly what effect she had on men. "It's so nice to finally meet you," she said, and her voice was smooth as butter. "Julian talks about you all the time." Julian. My husband, talking about me to his mistress. I shook her hand because what else was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Scream? Throw them both out? I was too shocked, too numb. My brain was still trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. "What do you do, Simone?" Vanessa asked, settling back into her chair like she belonged there. Like she'd been there 100 times before. I opened my mouth to answer, but Julian cut me off. He laughed. That laugh again, but this time it had an edge to it, a dismissiveness that cut right through me. "She's just a housewife," he said, reaching for his wine glass. "Keeps the home running while I handle the real work. The actual career stuff, you know? Just a housewife. Just." That word hung in the air between us like smoke, like poison. Vanessa tilted her head, giving me this look. This pitying, condescending look that women give other women when they think they're better than you, when they think they've won something you didn't even know you were competing for. "Oh," she said, drawing out the word. "Well, someone has to do it, I suppose. Not everyone is cut out for the corporate world." I felt something crack inside my chest, something that had been holding on for years maybe, keeping everything together, keeping me together. And it just broke. Julian leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, completely comfortable, humiliating me in front of this woman. In front of his mistress. In my own home. "Yeah, Simone's useless when it comes to business," he continued, like I wasn't standing right there, like I couldn't hear him. "She doesn't understand what I do. The pressure, the competition, the strategy. That's why I need Vanessa at the office. She actually gets it, she understands the game. Useless." He called me useless. The woman who had supported him through law school, the woman who had believed in him when no one else did, the woman who had sacrificed everything, to make sure he could chase his dreams. Useless. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew as they sat there in my dining room, drinking my wine, eating the dinner I'd prepared that morning before I left for work, what they couldn't possibly know was that I owned the company Julian worked for, every single paycheck he'd ever received, every promotion he'd bragged about to his boys at the barbershop, every bonus he'd deposited into our joint account while telling me how hard he'd worked for it, every executive decision he thought he'd made sitting in that corner office on the 23rd floor. All of it came from me. I founded Carter Digital Solutions 12 years ago from our one-bedroom apartment in Southeast. I built a multi-million-dollar tech consulting firm from absolutely nothing while he was busy studying for the bar exam. I was the CEO, the founder, the woman whose signature was on every major contract, every partnership deal, every acquisition, and he had no idea. Before I tell you how that dinner ended, before I tell you how I watched Julian's whole world collapse in real time, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one, and your support means everything to me. It really does. Now let me tell you exactly how I got here, how a girl from Southeast D.C. ended up owning a company her own husband didn't know existed. My name is Simone Elise Carter. I grew up in Congress Heights, in a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody, and everybody's business was everybody's business. My mother, Lorraine Carter, cleaned houses for wealthy families in Georgetown and Chevy Chase. My father left when I was 6, and I barely remember him. Just the smell of his cologne and the sound of the door closing that last time. Mama worked herself to the bone to make sure I had what I needed. She made sure I got into a good high school, made sure I understood that education was my way out, my way up. She used to tell me, "Baby girl, you're twice as smart as those kids in Georgetown, but the world's gonna make you work 3 times as hard to prove it, so you better be ready." I was ready. I graduated top of my class, got a full scholarship to Howard. That's where I met Julian Washington. He was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, ambitious, fine as hell with those dark brown eyes and that smile that made you forget your own name. He was from Atlanta, came from a good family. Daddy was a judge, Mama was a professor, the kind of family that had backyard barbecues with other professional black families, where everyone talked about their kids' accomplishments and which country club had the best golf course. Julian was charming. He pursued me hard. Flowers. Late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about our dreams. He wanted to be a civil rights attorney, fight for justice, make a difference. I wanted to build something, create something from nothing. I was majoring in computer science and business, already coding websites for small businesses to make extra money. We got married right after graduation. I was 23, he was 25. We moved into that tiny apartment in Southeast, and I started Carter Digital Solutions while he went to Georgetown Law. The plan was simple. I'd build my business, he'd become a lawyer, and we'd build a life together, an empire together, 2 young, ambitious black professionals taking on the world. But somewhere along the way, Julian started changing. At first, it was subtle, little comments here and there. "People must think I'm Mr. Carter," he'd joke when I'd talk about my business at dinner parties. "When are you gonna take my last name for real?" Then the comments got sharper. We'd be at events with his law school friends, and he'd introduce me as his wife who does some computer stuff. Like I wasn't running a growing company. Like I wasn't landing contracts with major corporations. When my business really started taking off, when the money started coming in, real money, multiple 6 figures that first year alone, Julian couldn't handle it. He'd just passed the bar, landed an associate position at a mid-tier firm making $85,000 a year, and I was already clearing 3 times that. I watched him shrink, watched his confidence drain away every time someone asked about my business. Watched him get quieter and quieter at family gatherings when my success came up. So, I made a decision I've regretted every single day since. I told him I was stepping back from the business. Told him I wanted to focus on starting a family, on being a supportive wife while he built his career. I saw the relief flood his face when I said it, saw him stand up straighter, saw that confidence come rushing back. But I didn't actually step back. I created a holding company, Carter Holdings LLC, restructured everything so that on paper, I was just a silent investor. I hired a management team. I started operating through intermediaries. And I let Julian believe that I'd walked away from my dream to support his. The business kept growing. I kept making strategic decisions, landing major contracts, expanding our services. But Julian never knew. To him, I was just his wife. His housewife. The woman who made sure his shirts were pressed and dinner was on the table and the house looked good when his colleagues came over. And you know what the really twisted part is? I hired him. 5 years into our marriage, Julian was still at that mid-tier firm, making decent money but not great money. He was frustrated, felt like he wasn't advancing fast enough. So I made a call to the head of our legal department, at my company, and suggested they recruit Julian Washington for their corporate counsel team. He thought he got the job on merit. Thought he'd impress them in the interview, never knew his wife owned the whole damn company, never knew that every promotion he got after that, every raise, every corner office with the view of the Potomac, it all came from me orchestrating behind the scenes. Why did I do it? Because I loved him, because I was young and stupid and I thought if I could just make him feel successful, feel important, feel like the man, then he'd love me the way he used to. Then he'd see me the way he used to. Then we'd be partners again instead of him resenting me for being more successful, but it didn't work. The more successful Julian became at his career, the worse he treated me, the more dismissive he got. The more he looked at me like I was just there, just part of the furniture, just the wife who kept things running at home while he did the real work. He stopped asking about my day, stopped touching me the way he used to, stopped seeing me at all. I started noticing things about 6 months ago, little things that didn't quite add up. Text messages he'd angle his phone away from me to read, late nights at the office that became later and later, a new cologne I didn't recognize, shirts with lipstick stains he thought I wouldn't notice because, let's be honest, he probably thought I was too stupid to notice. One night, I was paying our credit card bill online, something I'd always done because Julian was too busy with work, and I saw a charge that made my blood run cold. Fiola Mare, $347.56. On a Thursday night 3 weeks ago when Julian told me he was working late on a big case. Fiola Mare is a romantic restaurant in Georgetown, the kind of place you take someone you're trying to impress. The kind of place with candlelight and waterfront views and a wine list that costs more than most people's monthly car payment. I sat there at my laptop, in our home office, staring at that charge, and something in me just knew. I hired a private investigator the next day. Marcus Chen, best in D.C., came highly recommended by my corporate attorney. I gave him everything he needed. Julian's schedule, his usual patterns, credit card statements, phone records that I had access to as his wife. The photos came back 2 weeks later. Julian, my husband, the man I'd built my whole life around, with Vanessa Morrison, his executive assistant at my company. The woman I'd personally approved hiring 9 months ago because her resume was impressive and our legal department needed support. The photos they were everything you imagine and worse. Hand-holding at restaurants, kissing in parking garages, checking into the Hay Adams Hotel on a Tuesday afternoon, both of them looking happy, looking free, looking like people who weren't betraying anyone. The investigator's report was thorough. The affair had been going on for 8 months. They weren't even trying to hide it, not really. They'd been seen all over the city. Colleagues knew, people at my own company knew that the head corporate counsel was sleeping with his assistant. And nobody told me. Nobody thought the wife needed to know that her husband was making a fool of her. I sat with those photos for 3 days, didn't confront him, didn't say a word, I just watched him. Watched him come home and kiss me on the forehead like everything was normal. Watched him complain about how tired he was from work. Watched him text her goodnight after he thought I'd fallen asleep. And I made a plan. I could have confronted him immediately. Could have thrown him out that same night. Could have fired both of them with a single phone call to HR. But I wanted to know something first. I needed to know. How far would he go? How little did he think of me? How completely had I disappeared in his eyes? So I waited. I documented everything. I called my attorney, Rebecca Lawrence. Someone Julian had never met. Someone who worked for a different firm. I had her draft divorce papers. I updated my will, making it crystal clear that everything was in my name alone. I started separating our finances, moving money into accounts he didn't know existed. I prepared. And then, 2 weeks ago, Julian came home and told me he wanted to have a colleague over for dinner. Just a work thing, he said, not even looking up from his phone. My assistant Vanessa has some great ideas for this new corporate strategy we're developing. I thought it'd be good to discuss it over dinner. You don't mind cooking, right? You don't mind cooking. For his mistress. In our home. I said yes, smiled. Told him of course I didn't mind. What would I like to make? What did he think would impress his colleague? He shrugged. Whatever. You know I'm not picky. Just make it nice. Make it nice. For the woman he was sleeping with. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I contacted every member of my board of directors. Had an emergency meeting scheduled for the day after the dinner. I briefed my CFO, my head of HR, my general counsel, everyone who needed to know what was about to happen. I had our forensic accountants go through every single expense report Julian had ever submitted, every business trip, every client dinner. They found everything. Every hotel room he'd shared with Vanessa, every expensive dinner charged to the company card, every lie documented in black and white. I made sure everything was ready. The divorce papers, the termination letters, the evidence, all of it organized in a leather folder that I kept in my home office, waiting. The day of the dinner arrived. Tuesday, March 14th. I took the day off work, which was easy since I'm the CEO, and I can do whatever I want. I went to the Eastern Market, bought fresh ingredients. I made coco vin, Julian's favorite, because I've always had a twisted sense of humor. I set the table with our good china, put flowers in a vase, made everything perfect. I even dressed nice. Not too nice, because I was playing a role, wasn't I? The housewife, the woman who stayed home and cooked and cleaned and didn't understand the real world. I wore jeans and a simple blouse. Left my hair natural, pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup. No jewelry except my wedding ring, which suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Vanessa arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, stepping out of an Uber Black in those expensive heels and that cream pantsuit that probably cost more than my first car. She looked around our neighborhood, our beautiful row house in Capitol Hill that I'd bought 5 years ago, and I saw it in her eyes. The assessment, the judgment, the assumption that this was all Julian's. That he was the successful one. That he'd married down and was supporting some simple woman who couldn't do any better. Julian greeted her at the door like she was visiting royalty. Took her coat, offered her wine, showed her around our home, my home, pointing out features like he was giving a tour of his accomplishments. And then we sat down to dinner. That's when it all started. The comments, the condescension, the casual cruelty that people inflict when they think you're beneath them. Vanessa kept asking me questions, but they weren't real questions. They were tests. They were ways to confirm what she already believed about me. So, Simone, what do you do with your time? Not what do you do for work. What do you do with your time? Like I was a child filling empty hours. How do you spend your days? With this little smile that said she already knew the answer. Already knew I was nobody, nothing. I played along. Told her I managed some investments. Did some volunteer work. Kept busy. Julian actually laughed. Laughed at me. In front of her. Investments, he said, shaking his head like I'd told a joke. She means her Pinterest boards and her book club with the neighborhood ladies. Simone likes to feel important. Likes to feel important. Vanessa giggled. Actually giggled. Well, we can't all be career women. Some people are meant for domestic life. There's no shame in that. No shame in that. Said like she was being generous, like she was throwing me a bone. Julian leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine, completely comfortable. That's why I need Vanessa at the office, he said, and his voice had this warmth to it when he talked about her. This appreciation, this respect. Everything he used to have for me, gone. Transferred to this woman sitting at my table. She actually understands what I do. The pressure, the complexity, the strategy. Simone here, she's useless when it comes to business. She doesn't get it, never has. Useless. There it was again. That word. I felt something inside me go completely still, completely calm, like the eye of a hurricane. Everything around me was chaos and pain and rage, but in the center, I was ice cold and crystal clear. I excused myself from the table. Told them I needed to get dessert from the kitchen. Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't go to any trouble for me. Don't go to any trouble. I walked to my home office instead, opened my desk drawer, pulled out the leather folder I'd prepared, looked at myself in the mirror hanging on the wall. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. When had I become so small? When had I decided that making him comfortable was more important than respecting myself? When had I traded my voice, my power, my truth, for a marriage that was already dead? I looked down at the folder in my hands. Everything was in there, every document, every proof, every piece of evidence that would destroy the life Julian thought he was living. This was it. No more hiding, no more playing small, no more being invisible in my own life. I walked back to the dining room. No dessert, just the folder. Julian looked annoyed. Where's dessert? Actually, I said, setting the folder on the table between us. Before dessert, there's something we need to discuss. Can't it wait? Julian's voice had that edge to it, that tone he used when he was irritated with me, when I was inconveniencing him. We're in the middle of something here. No, I said, and my voice was steady, calm. I really don't think it can wait. I opened the folder. The first document I pulled out was the incorporation papers for Carter Digital Solutions, founded March 15, 12 years ago. Founder and CEO, Simone Elise Carter. I slid it across the table. This is Carter Digital Solutions, I said. The company you both work for. Julian stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I founded this company 12 years ago. I've been CEO the entire time. Every day you've worked there. Every paycheck you've cashed, every promotion you've celebrated, it all came from me. The color started draining from his face. Vanessa leaned forward, squinting at the document. This is some kind of joke. I pulled out the next document. Our organizational chart. the whole company hierarchy laid out in neat boxes and lines. Here's your position, Julian, Senior Corporate Counsel, and here's yours, Vanessa, Executive Assistant to Corporate Counsel. And if you follow the reporting lines, up, 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 past your boss, and your boss's boss, and the VP of Legal Affairs, and the Chief Legal Officer, and the Chief Operating Officer, you eventually get to here. I pointed to the top box. CEO and founder, Simone E. Carter. You both report to me. Everyone reports to me. Vanessa's mouth fell open. You're the Simone Carter? I go by my maiden name professionally, I said. I find it keeps things simpler. Most people don't make the connection to Julian's wife. Why would they? Julian's wife is just a housewife, right? She doesn't understand business. I pulled out another document. Vanessa's employment contract from 9 months ago, my signature at the bottom, final approver. I hired you, Vanessa. I approved your salary, your benefits, your position. I signed off on every single thing about your employment. Then I pulled out Julian's employment offer from 5 years ago, my signature again. I hired you too, Julian. Had our head of legal reach out to you specifically, made sure the offer was generous enough that you'd leave your old firm, orchestrated every promotion you've had since. Julian's hands were shaking. This isn't. You can't. I don't understand. What don't you understand? My voice was still calm, still steady. That your useless wife built a company worth $47 million? That she's been running it this entire time while you thought she was home doing nothing? That every success you think you earned was actually handed to you by the woman you've been cheating on? I didn't, Julian started, but I held up my hand. Don't insult me more than you already have. I pulled out more documents. Expense reports, hotel receipts, credit card statements, all with Julian's name on them, all charged to my company. The Hay Adams Hotel, 8 visits in the last 3 months, $450 a night. Fiola Mare. Minibar, Rasika, all those romantic dinners you thought the company was paying for, I was paying for them. I paid for you to wine and dine your mistress. Vanessa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I didn't know you two were still together. He told me you were separated, he said. Separated? I looked at Julian. Is that what you told her? That we were separated? Julian's mouth opened and closed like a fish. No sound came out. We live in the same house, Julian. We share the same bed. We had breakfast together this morning. What part of that seems separated to you? Vanessa grabbed her purse. I need to go. Sit down, I said, and something in my voice made her freeze. We're not finished. I pulled out 2 more documents. Termination letters, both signed by me as CEO, both dated today. Julian Washington and Vanessa Morrison, you are both hereby terminated from Carter Digital Solutions, effective immediately. Security will escort you out tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. You'll have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Anything left behind will be shipped to your home address. Julian found his voice. You can't fire me. I can, and I did. You violated company policy by engaging in a relationship with a direct report without disclosure. You falsified expense reports. You used company resources for personal matters. I have grounds to fire you for cause, which means no severance package, no benefits continuation, nothing. Vanessa's voice was small. But I need this job. I can't afford. Should have thought about that before you decided sleeping with your boss was a good career move. I pulled out the final document, divorce papers. I slid them across the table to Julian. And since we're cleaning house, you can sign these now, or you can sign them through your lawyer. Your choice. But either way, our marriage is over. That's when Julian's face went white, completely white. All the blood just drained right out of it. His hands started shaking, his eyes went wide, and I knew, in that moment, that it was finally hitting him. All of it. The reality. The truth. Everything he thought he was, everything he thought he had, everything he'd built his identity around for the last 5 years, gone, destroyed, revealed as a lie. Simone, please. His voice cracked. We can talk about this. We can work this out. Work it out? I laughed, and it wasn't a nice laugh. You brought your mistress into my home. You called me useless in front of the woman you're sleeping with. You humiliated me at my own table, in my own house, and you want to work it out? I didn't know, he shouted, standing up so fast his chair fell backward. I didn't know it was your company. I didn't know you were, so that makes it better? My voice was ice. You only disrespected me and cheated on me because you thought I was nobody? Because you thought I was just some stupid housewife who didn't matter? Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I was your boss? He opened his mouth, closed it, had no answer. That's what I thought. Vanessa tried again to leave. I really should. I have security footage from the office, I said, not even looking at her. From the cameras in the parking garage, the elevator, the hallways. I have text messages from the company phones I own. I have hotel receipts. I have everything, Vanessa. So, if you're thinking about trying to sue for wrongful termination, I'd think very carefully about that decision. She sat back down. Julian was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. This can't be happening. This isn't real. Oh, it's real. It's very real. And you know what the best part is? I leaned back in my chair, finally relaxed for the first time all evening. You did this to yourself, both of you. You got so comfortable, so confident in your assumptions about who I was and what I was worth, that you never once stopped to question it. You never asked about my day. You never wondered where the mortgage payments came from. You never questioned how we could afford this house, the cars, the lifestyle, on just your salary. Julian stopped pacing. The mortgage is in my name, the house is in my name, the cars are in my name. Everything, Julian, is in my name. You want to know why? Because 12 years ago, when I started my company, my lawyer advised me to keep my business assets separate from marital assets. Just in case, and I'm so glad I listened. You can't take everything, he said, but his voice had no strength behind it. I'll sue. I'll fight this. With what money? The salary I paid you? The bonuses I approved? You can try to sue me, Julian, but you're going to find out real quick that every penny you have came from me, and I can afford much better lawyers than you can. I stood up, gathered my documents, and put them back in the folder. You have 24 hours to move out of this house. Take only what you brought into this marriage. Security will inventory everything tomorrow. Anything of mine you try to take, I'll have you charged with theft. And Julian? He looked up at me, his eyes red, his face destroyed. That useless housewife you've been mocking? She's worth $47 million. You're worth whatever you can carry in a suitcase. Now get out of my house. What happened next? What happened in the weeks after that dinner? If you're enjoying this story, please drop a like and leave a comment. Your support keeps these stories coming. I see every single one, and it means the world to me. Thank you. Now let me tell you about the fallout. Julian tried to stay. Tried to talk to me. Followed me around the house talking about counseling, about second chances, about how he'd made a mistake, how he loved me, how we could work through this. I called my lawyer. Rebecca had 2 associates and a moving truck at my house by 10 p.m. They supervised while Julian packed his clothes, his books, his personal items. Everything else stayed. The furniture I'd bought, the art I'd collected, the life I'd built. He kept saying he'd made a mistake, that he didn't know, that if he'd known who I really was, he never would have. And that's when I stopped him. That's the problem, Julian. You should have treated me with respect because I'm your wife, because I'm a human being, not because I own a company or have money. The fact that you only regret this now that you know I have power? That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. He left at midnight. Vanessa had already disappeared hours ago, probably calling everyone she knew, trying to do damage control on her career. Good luck with that. In the tech industry in D.C., word travels fast. By morning, everyone would know what happened. I stood in my empty house, in my dining room where just hours before I'd been called useless, and I felt free, lighter than I'd felt in years, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there, and suddenly it was gone. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat at my table, and I laughed. I laughed so hard I cried, because the absurdity of it all, the sheer stupidity of Julian throwing away everything, not knowing he was throwing away everything, it was almost too much. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Julian tried to fight it. Hired a lawyer who thought he could get Julian half of our assets. That lasted exactly 1 meeting with my legal team. When they presented the prenup Julian had signed 13 years ago, the prenup he'd never bothered to read because he was so confident in his own success, the prenup that stated clearly that any business I started before or during the marriage was solely mine, his lawyer told him to take the deal on the table. The deal was simple. He got nothing, no alimony, no share of my company, no share of the house. He got his personal belongings, his $401k that he'd funded with the salary I paid him, and whatever was in our joint checking account, which was about $3,000. Julian's family tried to intervene. His mother called me, crying, asking how I could do this to her son. His father, the judge, actually threatened me, said I'd regret destroying his son's career. I told them the truth. Their son destroyed his own career when he decided to sleep with his subordinate and use company funds to do it. Their son destroyed his own marriage when he brought his mistress into our home and called his wife useless. Their son made his choices. Now he gets to live with them. The company handled the terminations quietly. Vanessa Morrison was gone by 9 a.m. the next morning, escorted out by security just like I'd promised. She tried to file for unemployment, claimed wrongful termination. HR sent her the file of evidence, every inappropriate text, every expense report, every policy violation. She withdrew her claim within 24 hours. Last I heard, she was working at a retail store in Tyson's Corner, probably telling herself she was too good for it, probably blaming me for her choices. Julian moved back in with his parents in Atlanta. At 40 years old, his mother sent me a Facebook message calling me cruel, calling me heartless, saying I'd ruined her son's life. I blocked her and moved on. The company thrived after I stopped hiding. Revenue was up 23% in the first quarter after I came out publicly as CEO. Turns out, when you stop pretending to be less than you are, when you stop playing small to make other people comfortable, people respect you more, not less, more. We landed 3 major contracts within 2 months. Government agencies that wanted to work with a Black woman-owned business. Fortune 500 companies that were impressed by my story, by what I'd built. I was featured in Black Enterprise magazine. The CEO who hid in plain sight was the headline. The article talked about my journey, about building Carter Digital Solutions from nothing, about the unique challenges Black women face in tech, about how society tells us to be humble, to not threaten male egos, to make ourselves smaller so others can feel bigger, about how I'd learned the hard way that shrinking myself didn't save my marriage, it just cost me my self-respect. The article went viral. I started getting speaking requests, women reaching out, telling me their own stories of making themselves small, of hiding their success from partners who couldn't handle it, of sacrificing their dreams to support men who didn't appreciate it. It was heartbreaking. It was inspiring. It was a movement I didn't know I was starting. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was in my office, the office that now had my name on the door in big letters, CEO Simone E. Carter, when my assistant buzzed me, said there was a young woman here to see me, no appointment, but she said it was urgent. I almost said no. My calendar was packed, but something made me say yes. The woman who walked into my office was young, maybe 26, 27, Black, beautiful, nervous. She was wringing her hands, looking around my office like she couldn't believe she was there. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice shaking. "Thank you for seeing me. I know you don't know me, but I read your article, and I had to come." I gestured for her to sit. "What's your name?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Brooks. I work here, in your company. I'm a junior developer on the infrastructure team." I nodded. We had over 300 employees now. I couldn't know everyone personally, but I tried. "What can I do for you, Jasmine?" She took a deep breath. "My boyfriend works here too, in sales. We've been together for 3 years, and he's been treating me badly, making me feel small, making comments about how I got my job because of diversity quotas, not talent, how I should be grateful he's with me because I'm not that smart or that pretty." Her voice cracked. "But I started a side business, a coding tutoring platform for young Black girls who want to get into tech. It's doing well. Really well. I've been running it for a year now, and it's starting to make real money, but I'm scared." Scared of what? Scared to tell him. Scared that if he knows I'm successful, if he knows I'm doing something without him, he'll leave. Or worse, he'll tell me to shut it down, tell me I'm neglecting him, tell me I need to focus on our relationship instead of my silly little project. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "But after reading your story, I realized I'm not scared of losing him. I'm scared of losing myself. Of becoming someone who hides who she is to make someone else comfortable. And I can't do that, I won't." I sat back in my chair, looking at this young woman, who reminded me so much of myself 15 years ago, full of potential, full of dreams, on the verge of sacrificing it all for a man who didn't deserve it. "Jasmine," I said, "what's your side business called?" "Code Her," she said, sitting up straighter. "We teach girls ages 10 to 18 how to code. We offer free classes, mentorship, scholarships. We've served over 500 girls in the last year. That's incredible. Do you have a business plan? Revenue projections? She pulled out a folder, had everything organized, professional, thorough. This woman wasn't playing around. I looked through her documents. Her platform was genuinely impressive. Smart business model, social impact, growth potential. Here's what I'm going to tell you, I said, closing the folder. Don't hide this. Don't make yourself small. Don't apologize for being successful. And if your boyfriend can't handle your success, then he's not the right partner for you. She nodded, wiping her eyes. But more than that, I continued. I want to invest in Code Hair. I want to be your first major investor, and I want to mentor you, help you scale this, turn it into something that changes lives. Jasmine's mouth fell open. You want to invest? I want to invest in you, in your vision, in what you're building, because the world needs more women like you, more women who refuse to hide their light, more women who choose themselves. She started crying for real then, happy tears, grateful tears. But you need to promise me something, I said. Anything. Promise me you'll never, ever make yourself small for someone else. Promise me that if your boyfriend, or anyone else, tries to dim your shine, you'll choose yourself, every single time. I promise. We shook hands, started a partnership that day. Code Her is now one of the fastest growing educational tech platforms for young Black girls in the country. Jasmine is thriving. And her boyfriend? She broke up with him 2 weeks after our meeting. Last I heard, he's still at the company, still in sales, still mediocre. She's a CEO now, just like me. I think about that dinner sometimes. About the look on Julian's face when reality crashed down on him. About Vanessa's shock when she realized the woman she'd pitied was actually the most powerful person in the room. About how close I came to spending the rest of my life playing small, hiding who I was, apologizing for my success. I think about all the years I wasted making Julian comfortable, making him feel important, building him up while tearing myself down. All the times I bit my tongue when he dismissed me. All the times I smiled and nodded when he explained things to me that I already knew better than he did. All the times I pretended to be less so he could feel like more. And you know what? I'm not angry anymore. I was angry. God knows I was furious for months. But now I'm just free. Free to be exactly who I am. Free to build my company without hiding. Free to make decisions without worrying about some man's fragile ego. Free to be successful, powerful, rich, smart, ambitious, all the things I always was but felt like I had to hide. I'm 38 years old. I own a company worth $47 million. I employ over 300 people. I'm changing lives through my investments in other women-owned businesses. I'm mentoring the next generation of Black women entrepreneurs. I'm living out loud, unapologetically, completely as myself. And I'm single. Happily single. People keep asking when I'm going to start dating again. My mother calls weekly, asking if I've met anyone. My friends try to set me up with their divorced brothers and cousins. But I'm not interested. Not right now, maybe not ever. Because I finally learned the most important lesson of my life. I don't need a partner to be complete. I don't need a man to validate my worth. I don't need to shrink myself to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. I am enough. I have always been enough. And anyone who can't see that, anyone who needs me to be less so they can feel like more, doesn't deserve a place in my life. I stand in my office sometimes, looking out at the D.C. skyline, and I think about that girl from Congress Heights, that little girl whose mama cleaned houses and worked herself to the bone. That little girl who was told she'd have to work 3 times as hard to get half as far. She made it. Against all the odds, against all the expectations, against a system designed to keep her small, she made it. She built something from nothing. She created an empire. She changed lives. And she did it, while everyone told her she was just a housewife, just useless, just not enough. I walked into my own dining room and found my husband with his mistress there. He laughed and called me, just a housewife. Said I was useless when it came to business. I smiled, pulled out the company ownership papers, and watched his face go white. That was the last time anyone underestimated me. My name is Simone Elise Carter. I'm 38 years old. I'm a CEO, an entrepreneur, a mentor, a businesswoman, a force to be reckoned with. And I'm done being just anything.